Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman. Now I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. Oh, we're in the car. You see the street lamps are out, man. It's dark out. Means it's Wednesday night. That means it's time for a little AHS. Oh, man. Last week, the preview made it look like this was going to be a big ep. This is a massive ep, man. So I can't waste any time. Why don't you pull up a chair? Take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in spoiler free and then spoiler filled into American Horror Story 1984, Episode 4, titled True Killers. And oh man, I tell you, it's the first week where I love the title. The title, oh, it's so perfect for this episode. And for this non spoiler portion, I'm just gonna say I did this a lot.
Oh. Oh! Why would you drop that? Oh god. Oh god. Oh no, he put him in the... Oh no. Oh god. Please. Oh. Ooh.
It is a legit jaw-dropping type episode, and shout out to my friends Matt and Julia, whose house I'm crashing at. That serves as the background for the reactions this week, as I'm dog sitting their dog Rocky. But let's just dive into this bad boy, man. This is a huge episode, and much like what it set up, it delivered, and it delivered big time, man. Like we saw in the preview last week that Jingles and Nightstalker were gonna show down, man. They were gonna go at it one-on-one, and just completely out of sequence, but since I'm there, everything you could have wanted in that sequence. Oh my gosh, man. It was big. It was epic. I got a tease, just a little sample right now to get you to stick around for the spoiler discussion. So check this out.
Oh.
I'm telling you, man, that's just the tip of the iceberg in that sequence and this episode. And what we get in this episode is some great backstory once again for some of our characters. We continue to learn more about each of these characters, and we continue to find out that they're not who we think they are. We pick up right where we left off last week, where we're learning things about Montana and her relationship with the Nightstalker and what's really going on in that story. And then it just gets wild, man, because paths start crossing. Like everybody else that's there is trying to get out. And in the meantime, not knowing it, these two killers are just heading right toward each other. And while it delivers big action, like I said, that scene is a ton of fun. It delivered a lot, like I said, of these and jaw-dropping moments, excellent kills this episode. Really, really some nice emotional beats, man. I'm a big fan of Cody Fern, and I'm loving what's going on with his character Xavier, and he gets a beat in this episode where I was like, I'm feeling that, man, in my chest, right? My chest plate, man. Rip it open. I'm feeling it right there in the old heart. And I was like, that's why I love Cody Fern. He's such a great actor, and he sells that scene so well. Even though it's like a minor character, you're just like, oh man, dude, like I feel that. And then, because of that, you're feeling everything else that he's feeling in that moment. And some stuff happens to Xavier in this episode where you're, again, just jaw dropping, like, what? It's impressive that it's still hinged to my mouth, man. There were so many jaw-dropping moments. But I like the things that we learned, and I love what this episode sets up. Oh, man. And it has some really nice callbacks to things that we know from classic horror movies. There are one or two moments where you're just like, haha, man, you can't fool a possum. I just say that. But some really, nice stuff as far as, again, playing out this horror story slasher flick. And what's nice is these first 4 episodes kind of make almost like the first installment of a movie. I thought we were going to get to a place where the episode was going to end, or kind of, oh man, we're kind of earlying up, where episode 6 is usually a big shift in the storytelling. And it seemed like it was going that way, and it doesn't. It sets up huge twists and turns at the end of this episode that set up some big things going forward. But it did kind of like it feels like this is just wrapping into a really nice movie. Like it has, each episode is providing the beats that you would get in a film, and it's just extending it out. And I'm just loving everything they were doing on Horror Story this year, man. It has been so much fun, but I don't want to waste any more of your time just talking non-spoiler stuff, man. So if you haven't watched the episode, now's your chance. Go run, get under the covers, throw on American Horror Story 1984, episode 4, True Killers, and then come back and enjoy this spoiler discussion that we're about to have, because, oh man, this episode is full of juicy, wonderful spoilers. So 3, 2, 1. If you're still here and you haven't watched, I'm sorry, but we are spoiling the crap out of one of the more fun episodes that I've seen in Horror Story in a while. And an episode that's so big, like so many big things happen in this episode. So you know how we like to roll, man. We just gotta rip through the episode, and we're gonna talk about the things that were awesome and see some pretty great reactions tonight. So first things first, man. Like I said, we start off learning more about Montana and the Nightstalker, and we start with one of those like title cards that says "then," and we get to watch this awesomely choreographed sequence where Montana is leading an aerobics group of all dudes dancing to frickin' Billy Idol. Oh, it's so good. And like we saw in the preview, Nightstalker shows up, and this is the beginning of their relationship. And she's like, this isn't for posers, because he's doing this kind of like weird dance movement stuff, and like you're getting these whispers of Satan that all over the episode, this episode. Like you get a lot of these like hints of like him hearing things or things going on in him that are clearly tied to Satan, and it makes you wonder if they'll tie in the Church of Satan, which we saw last year in Apocalypse. I don't know if that'll make any ties, but maybe this is the stuff that Falchuk and Murphy like to do. At the beginning, before they kind of did that crossover season last year, where they kind of like lay in nice little things where it's like, yeah, you could make the connection that this is tied to this, but we won't maybe entirely show it. I'll be interested to see if they play with that at all. But there's certainly some big satanic Church of Satan type stuff going on with the Nightstalker, and we will get there. But this opening sequence, man, was so much fun. Like I said, the choreography of the dance scene is great. And Montana's like, look, this isn't a room for posers. This is aerobics. This is serious. And then like there's a guy yelling at her, like, why can't you put on like what's with this metal, man? Like, I don't like this Billy Idol stuff, man. I'm trying to get shredded. And she's like, goes over, turns it up, and is like, F you. And then immediately you know what's gonna happen. The Nightstalker and her kind of have like a moment, and naturally when she goes in the locker room at the end, I immediately you see
Oh no!
Suck it hard. You did this?
Oh, dude, got it. Oh.
Or his lack of appreciation for Billy and rock and roll in general.
Nothing good ever happens in a locker room in these horror movies or stories. And sure enough, she turns the corner, and there's homeboy who's talking about getting shredded, just guts hanging out, and you're like, oh, the Nightstalker's in. And then you get this kind of the beginning of a sex sequence that's really weird, man. It involved a lot of licking around the toes and leg by the stalker, and to Montana, who's covered in blood from walking into the scene. And then we kind of cut to them both on the floor covered in blood. She's like, you gotta clean this up, like I got class at 7:00. He's like, oh, I know what I'm doing. And it's here that the idea spawns. Like she basically is like, how many people have you killed? Would you kill me? Would you kill for me? Because I know this chick. And we get the big bomb, man. Like when we found out last week that Montana was working with the Nightstalker, you're like, wait, what? And again, it was one of those things that you kind of thought maybe was going on at the beginning. Like it kind of felt like that first encounter was strange, but we learned that they're all real encounters. But now we find out that the reason Montana wants to kill Brooke is because Brooke got her brother killed. The best man at the wedding is Montana's brother, and Montana, sure as anything, believes that she slept with him, and that led to everything that happened, including her brother getting killed by Brooke's, fiance, soon to be husband, who then kills himself instead of killing her. Like I said, man, jaw on the floor so much. And right in the first 3-4 minutes of the app, man, you're on the floor like, whoa, okay, now I get what's going on here. And from Montana and Nightstalker, we shift gears back over to, Trevor and Xavier, who are carrying Chet, and they kind of get him to a safe place, and they prop him down on kind of like a cot, and they're going to try to, like, take a look at him, and he kind of passes out. And what's great is, like, as it happens, I'm just like, oh, shit. And immediately, Xavier's like, oh, shit. So, just check it out.
Oh shit. Jet.
And you get this wonderful Tarantino nod where, like, he goes down and you see Trevor kind of looking and he comes up with a needle and you're like, oh, they're going to do this Pulp Fiction adrenaline shot. And as Trevor's, like, about here, you get Xavier like, whoa, what are you doing? Like, what is that? And he's like, dude, it's like epinephrine, man, like for like peanut allergies, but that's like straight adrenaline, man. Like, we gotta do something. Stabs in his chest. Nothing happens, right? Just like Pulp Fiction. And you're sitting there, just waiting. You're waiting. You're like, oh, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And he goes, blood starts shooting out of his shoulder. And they're like, look, we gotta go find, like, everybody else. We gotta get everybody regrouped and get back to the cars and get out of here. Because Xavier kind of mentions, like, oh, God, and I thought porn was bad. And they're like, huh? And then he's like, speaking of porn, that guy pulled his car, the keys are in the car, and he's just talking so fast, like, that they're not going to ask any questions, and they don't. And they opt that him and Trevor are going to split up, go get everybody else. Chet's going to just kind of take a nap and chill and try to lay low. And we follow Trevor first, but I mean, not follow, we go to Trevor's mark, which is Margaret, and we kind of continue to see that she's nuts. She stumbles. We ended her last week talking to Nightstalker. Now she's alone, and she stumbles into the 2 dead guys that Jingles killed that were impersonating him. And then Trevor shows up. He's like, we gotta get out of here. And in true crazy Margaret fashion, she's like, oh, no. Like, the kids are coming tomorrow. I can't go anywhere. Like, we have to hope. And he's like, lady, I'm getting out of here. He bolts. And then she leans down, grabs a mask. I'm like, oh, is she gonna put the Jingles mask on? And no, she takes some of the blood and then puts, like, a cross on his head, kind of like Ash Wednesday style. And you're just sitting there and you're like, oh, man, she is just batshit crazy. And then Xavier wasn't going after Brooke. Xavier goes back for a different B name. He goes back for Birdie. He's got this thing for, like, I'm not gonna leave the lunch lady behind. I'm gonna go get Birdie, save her. He finds Birdie, and Birdie essentially starts having a conversation with him when he's like, come on, we should try to get going. And all of a sudden she starts talking, and you're like, maybe she's, like, no good. And it's just a quick, like, it passes you by, and then all of a sudden Jingles shows up. You hear the keys, and she basically tells Xavier, like, hide under the table. And the whole time I'm just sitting there, I'm like, what is going on here? And you forget that Jingles, he worked there, so he knew Birdie, and when he comes in, Birdie's able to basically talk him down. And is like, kind of really, really calm. Is like, how about I make you a peanut butter and jelly? For a hot second, like, the whole lead up, you see her kind of, like, pointing to the peanut butter and jelly and to the table. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's telling Jingles that Xavier is under there? And thankfully she's not. And she's actually kind of directing him to the table, makes the PB&J, cuts it, gives it to him. He starts eating it. And she's like, you always didn't like having the crust. And everything seems good, and Xavier is also feeling like that, so he starts to move. But for whatever reason, drops the flashlight when he goes to put his hand down. And it makes a noise, and you're like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And sure enough, Jingles pulls him out. Jingles is about to mess him up. Birdie hits him over the head with, like, one of those, like, meat pounders, like tenderize the meat. I think it was that. But basically, like, then he turns, grabs her hand, and you're like, oh no, not Birdie. And he kind of, like, throws her, turns, and knocks out Xavier. And then you see him go back, stabs Birdie, like, 3 times in the chest. And then you just see him dialing up an oven. And as he walks away out of, the mess hall cabin, you see Xavier inside an oven. And he's literally cooking to death, which is, one of those things which we've seen before. And, you go to commercial, you come back, and he's starting to bubble. the makeup work on Xavier tonight was great, man. Like, it honestly looked like snake skin, which if you've ever gotten like a really bad burn, that's kind of what'll happen. And like it was just peeling off his body in a way where like at one point he's doing something later on where you're like, oh dude, like it looks like he's wearing a glove, but that's his burned skin. And I'm losing it because I'm a bit, like I said, I'm a big Cody Fern fan. I'm loving what he's doing with Xavier's character this year. And I'm like, it's too early to lose Xavier. Like, who's gonna save him? All of a sudden, like, you see hands and you're like, oh god, did he come back? No, it's Birdie. She's still alive. She is super messed up. She falls down, but she knocks out the thing that's kind of keeping the oven shut. Xavier's able to get out, and this is that emotional beat in the show that kind of caught me off guard, where Birdie basically grabs a knife and asks him to put her out of her misery because she's suffering. She's beat and stabbed, and it's one of those things where it's like you see it in movies, and especially in something like this, where it's just like boom, it's so easy, and Xavier really has to push, and it's heartbreaking to watch this relationship that's like barely anything, but there's a legit kind of bond and sincerity there, and Cody Fern sells it so well, as is the actress who plays Birdie, and it hit me in the chest, man. I was like, I felt that. And anytime you can make me feel an emotional move, especially in a horror movie, kudos to you, American Horror Story. But, from those two, we cut back to Brooke, who last week we saw get, needle to the neck dragged away by Donna, who was impersonating Rita, the nurse. And we see Brooke wake up. She kind of remembers all of this, and she's in like a shed, like a tool shed, and she busts down the door. Good on you, Emma Roberts. Like the first time she tries to knock it, doesn't do anything, and she runs full speed, knocks that thing right out. She takes off, and like as she's running, she hits like a wire of some kind, and you're like, oh no, booby traps. And one of these like giant logs with a bunch of spikes comes swinging down. She's able to move, but it hits her in the shoulder, and then she just takes off. And the minute she takes off, you're just like, oh no. Like, when is there ever just one booby trap in the forest? And sure enough, she stumbles over something, which triggers a net, and she's just up, hanging, caught. And Donna comes out, super creepy, explains that she's not Rita, explains that she's the psychiatrist, explains that she's the one that released Jingles, wanted him to go on this tear, and now Brooke is going to be part of the experiment. See if it's just offered to him, will he take it, or does he have to actually go and hunt for his prey? And you're like, oh man, poor Brooke, but like most likely nothing bad is going to happen to her. So we see all that go down, and Donna kind of goes off and hides, and we cut back over to where Xavier is, and you see him, kind of in the aftermath. He kind of slowly pulls out the blade from Birdie's chest as protection, and as he looks up, he gets his reflection, and it's one of those such an important shot because it really gives you an idea of who, deep down Xavier is and how much his face means to him. He later on in the episode talks about I'm never gonna be able to be on the cover of TV Guide. For those who don't know what TV Guide is, back in the day when you had TV and just regular old cable, there was a guide that you can sign up for and would come in the mail. You'd get at the grocery store that would tell you what was on that week. The way you can kind of hit the menu button and look at all the things on the channel that used to come to us in a booklet form. And famous people would be on the cover all the time. I have a collection of TV guides at home. Wrestlers, celebrities, it was a thing. So that you understand why Xavier feels like that, because he's a pretty boy, man. He wants to do those types of things. And when he sees his reflection, you're just heartbroken because you're like, oh, it's just now hitting him. Like, what has happened to him? And like I said, I'm just loving what Cody Fern's doing. You're just I was feeling for Xavier the whole episode. And then we immediately cut back to Brooke, who now has Montana find her, and you're like, oh, that's bad. Like, that's real bad. Montana plays the friendly card and is like, I'm gonna go find help. And she takes off, go find help. And then we cut back to Margaret, who's in one of the cabins now, and she finds this like old wooden bear toy, and we get a flashback. I was beaming because I called that there was something going on with her and Mr. Jingles from the get-go. And while I'm right, also American Horror Story decides to blow my mind. And what we end up seeing is she sees him and uses him by, calls him by his actual name. And he goes, I made you a bear. And she's like, oh, like, you bears mate for life, and you're just like, oh, let's see, there's something there, it's coming. And then the three folks from the threesome kind of come walking by, and they make fun of Margaret and him, and he gets real mad, cuts his finger. After they walk away, she kind of mentions like, I hate them. And then does one of them like real sexual, like, I'm gonna make that boo-boo better type move. And then Margaret goes, are you my bear? And you're like, oh my gosh, she pushed him to go kill all these kids. And we leave we leave there, and I'm just ecstatic because I'm like, I knew it. Like, I knew these two were in cahoots in some way the whole time. And then we cut back to Brooke hanging, and Nightstalker shows up, and he's coming over, and he's talking. He drops like the funniest line I think of the season so far. He's like, you, little miss, are slippery like a handful of water. And I just start immediately laughing, and you're like, okay, now stuff's about to go down, and you start hearing the keys, and Mr. Jingle shows up. And I love what the Nightstalker does right before the showdown. He kind of like gives props, like, you're the living, like, the camp, like, around the campfire legend stands before me. And he's like, basically, like, kind of pays like tribute to him, and then it's like, look, your time already happened. Like, Mr. Jingles lives forever. It's my time, man. Like, let's do this. And he kind of cracks his neck, and they start going at it. And this whole sequence is just so much fun, man, because they're going back and forth. And while they're fighting, you jump over and you see Montana find Donna while Brooke is just swinging in the wind in this giant net. And, we know that Montana knows that Donna is not Rita, the nurse, because they found the nurse. So they start fighting, and you're kind of cutting back and forth. And you see, like, before we kind of get into one of the Donna and Montana bits, Nightstalker gets cut real bad. He gets knocked down on the ground. And you're like, oh, he's out for the count. And here's our first possum moment. You cut back, you see him all slouched over. Mr. Jingles comes over, bam, to the back of the leg, then across the neck, across the back, and you're sitting there going, oh shoot, man, like the Nightstalker got the drop on him, like, great possum moment. And while all this is building, you get the moment that you're waiting for, man. Like, he turns around and cold cut, like, just in a quick spin, ends up punching Nightstalker in the face, and then grabs him in a chokehold. And everything that happens from there is just, but you got to watch how I reacted to this whole sequence.
Oh, possum style. Get him, Nightstalker. Oh, Brooke got the tree. Oh, he got him in the back. Oh, one punch. Oh no, choke slam style? Oh, that branch. Oh! Oh! Oh, God. Oh, bye, Nightstalker. Oh, Jingles, you one bad mother. Shut your mouth.
That, like I said, dude, like, there's a tree, and he, like, chokes him. Back of the head, out the mouth. They love putting stuff either down the throat or coming out the mouth in this entire season so far. But just kind of leaves him hanging there. And the last shot we see after everybody leaves and walks away is the branch snaps and he falls on the ground. And you're just like, oh, dude, like, it was a gruesome, brutal kind of thing. And you just gotta love that, like, Mr. Jingles is walking away from that one. But, like, at the same time, like, I liked what we were building with the Nightstalker, so you're a little disappointed. But of the two, like, Jingles has got to win. Gotta win that contest, right? So I love that it is gruesome and big the way that it was. So after that, Jingles is now heading back for Margaret. He's gonna go finish business. He kind of, Montana knocks Donna out and runs away. And Jingles takes off and he goes to find Margaret, and he finds her in the cabin, and basically is like, I'm here to finish what I started. She's like, I had this plan to bring back the kids, and you show up here and you ruin everything, and why are you even back? And he's like, to finish what I started. And she's like, you didn't start anything, and I'm telling you, man, jaw on the floor this whole freaking episode. I knew there was more to meets the eye with these two, and there was even more than I could have possibly thought, as we find out that Margaret is indeed the one. You think that she's posing him, and you see him get arrested. And you're like, oh, see, there it is. And then he goes into the mental institution, and you see the lady doctor that he chases at the beginning from the hospital, basically saying like his time in Vietnam and all this stuff. He doesn't even know who he is. So we're electroshock therapy, and what you find out is that it wasn't him. It was Margaret the whole time. He couldn't do it. He couldn't protect her. That's why she has this grudge against him, because he couldn't do it. She had to. And he's like, you start seeing the scene of her just killing everybody in that cabin. And he's like, no. It was me. It was me. She's like, no. Like, he's like, no, the Vietnam thing and the ears, like, that was me. And she's like, look, that was too good not to use. I had to. And you see the shot of her, like, stringing all the ears on. And you're just sitting there, and you're going, oh, my God, like, this is better than I could have even expected it to be. And then you watch Jingles legitimately just break down, like, slowly. Like, you put me through electroshock therapy and all this stuff that I believed the lie that you created, that I never should have even been in prison. I'm not crazy. But he's like, don't matter, because I am the monster that you created. And he goes for the stab, and she pulls out that gun that she mentioned to Trevor that she had. Bang, 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 shoots him in the chest. Down goes Jingles. They kind of have a moment, and all of a sudden, Trevor shows up, and you're like, oh man, like, I wonder how that she's gonna play this. And she plays exactly like, oh man, like, Mr. Jingles attacked me, and it's too bad he killed you. And all of a sudden Trevor's like, what? And I'm like, oh man, that prediction unfortunately not coming true for me, as far as the funny kill that would have been cutting off the big schlong that he was constantly talking about. Instead, he gets stabbed in the gut, and then just Margaret stabs him again. He tries to like go for the gun. She stabs him in the back, kills him, cuts his ear off. And when she turns back, like I said, this is one of those episodes that like played in that classic possum moment. Mr. Jingles is gone, baby. He's disappeared into the ether. And you're just like, yes, I am all about that. And from that room, Margaret's just like, okay, he's gone. She knows what she's got to go do. She's got to go keep perpetuating the lie that she's been telling, especially now she's going to have to go and be like, oh man, I was attacked. Trevor came in and saved me, but he killed him, and Mr. Jingles got away. But we follow Mr. Jingles, who runs into Xavier and Brooke. Xavier huffing and puffing and wheezing because he was burned alive. And then he looks up, and he's like right by like a little bridge kind of thing over a stream. He's leaning up against a post. He looks up. It was one of these things like Jingles kind of looks at him and is like, I'm not gonna finish you off. Like, you're not worth it. It's almost like he is kind of hunting prey, and it's like, you're not worth it. And he disappears, and Brooke shows up after getting out of the net, and it's like, oh my God, Xavier, what's the matter? What happened to you? And he's like, Jingles, he was right here. And all of a sudden you hear an explosion, and you see like light flash, and Brooke is like, we have to go now. And they run, and everybody's together now. You got Montana, and you got Margaret, and you got Chet is there, and you got Xavier and Brooke, and they're all around the car, and they're like, it was like this when we got here, like, it's just on fire. How are we gonna get out of here? And while they're trying to figure that out, we cut back to Donna, who was knocked unconscious, and she starts to see some real messed up stuff. Take a look at how this episode ended for the old Seaman.
What the shit? She becomes vessel for Satan. What? Oh my God.
Like, I sat there and I was like, what? And this is where I'm wondering if they're going to start tying in the Church of Satan more. Because, we saw him, he kind of set up a pentagram at one point in the episode, and they were kind of, he was praying. So they're playing into the Church of Satan a lot in the episode. All of a sudden, he starts floating off the ground, and you're hearing those whispers of Satan, Satan, Satan again. And the wounds start healing. Donna's watching all this happen, and he lands on the ground and just kind of smiles, and he looks at Donna, and you're like, oh my gosh. And episode massive, dude. This thing was so big. I mean, you saw like all the reactions right from the get-go. You're just sitting there slack-jawed the whole time. And the thing that Horror Story is doing so well, besides making odes and paying tribute to those classic horror flicks and giving us moments and things that we would want to expect in a show that's trying to pay tribute to classic slasher flicks. And we're getting all that stuff, but oh man, dude, they're creating like a great mystery on top of it. Every time you think you have anything figured out, there's a second or third turn to what that thing is, right? Like thinking that Margaret and Jingles had something going on, yeah, that's in there, but not what you expect it to be. And I love how American Horror Story is keeping you on your toes this season. And what's real cool is, like I said, this kind of felt like you were kind of heading towards the conclusion of it, like a full movie. I was like, oh, maybe they'll do like 3 segments, 4, 4, 4, rather than splitting it at 6, do 3, like almost like a trilogy. And we see for the previews next week, obviously, the Nightstalker's back, and Mr. Jingles is just like, you know what? I may not have done it. It may not have been me, but now I am this, and I'm coming for Margaret again. I'm gonna put this to an end. And it like I said, it's got that kind of quality of like, this kind of felt like the closing of like a consecutive trilogy, like a classic trilogy, where you kind of end and you want to pick up right where you left off. But that first chapter kind of closes with that big reveal that Margaret did everything, man. Like, that blew my mind. And then finding out that Montana is related to the best man who was shot in the head, and that's why she's gunning for Brooke. Like, the storylines are really, really nice. The fact that we're keeping Chet around, I'm interested. He's the lone guy, him and Xavier at this point. And obviously, like, I love Xavier and what they're doing with that character. But Chet has just kind of been around. He was mostly with Trevor and, his other buddy who lost his head last week. And now Trevor's dead. So I'll be interested to see if Chet's the next one to go. Obviously, that main core you like, but, things are going to have to start happening. So I'm fascinated to see where we're going. I'm loving what we're getting from Horror Story, man. Great death sequences, fantastic kills, which you want in the slasher genre. Twists and turns galore, and they don't seem far-fetched. They seem very true to form and real, and how they're pulling different elements from different movies and things that we've seen in this genre to create this very authentic feeling piece of horror, but also incredibly original to American Horror Story. And I'm just, like I expected, I'm having so much fun watching them use this genre. So there you go, man. There's the Seaman's thoughts on true killers. And like I said, I love the title of this episode because we find out who the true killers are and how the true killers maybe inspired some new killers that are about to go crazy next week. I'm looking forward to an unhinged Jingles now. I think there's a lot of fun stuff to play with in that character, which is why of the two of them, I was like, he's got to win. But now the Nightstalker's got some like crazy sci-fi stuff going on, with the stuff going on with. I imagine we're gonna learn that he's been hanging out at the Church of Satan, and it makes me wonder if we'll see anything from Apocalypse or any characters from Apocalypse. Maybe a Kathy Bates hint, maybe a little cameo. That'd be nice because we're always missing her. And Sarah Paulson is supposed to have a small role in this at some point, so I'll be interested to see where she pops up. But like I said, I love what they're doing. I love where we're going. Keep it up, American Horror Story. 4 eps in, you're doing everything that I want you to do with this genre. I'm really enjoying it, but the question is, are you, man? 4 eps in now. Are you still buying into this slasher series this year. Are you liking the twists and the turns? Did you love the showdown between Nightstalker and Mr. Jingles? Was it everything you want? Are you hoping for another showdown between these two? Did you like that Nightstalker came back afterwards? Let me know all the things that were your favorite moments and parts of the episode, the things that stood out. I mean, like I said, we got lots of moments where you were like, so let me know everything you were liking or not liking about this episode. Which characters that we lost are killing you. Like, I'm feeling bad for Birdie because Cody Fern sold the crap out of that scene. So let me know anything you're thinking down in the comments below. And as far as what you're hoping or looking forward to maybe next week or as we move forward. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out, you enjoyed this video, you hang out with me a little bit, you want to hang out with the C-Man every week, then you got to go do me a favor, man. It's real easy. You can keep up with all my American Horror Story coverage and any of my movie or trailer stuff, too. Go hit that subscribe button. Then go hit that little bell that follows it so you get the alert so you know when I drop my American Horror Story content late in the middle of the night on the East Coast and late night on the West. But do those things for me, and I'm going to keep cranking out some, hopefully, quality content for you guys. So do that. As always, I'll keep bringing it on this end. And for the C-Man Cinema Sit Down, I am the C-Man, and I'm signing off. Until next week, American Horror Story people. Peace! Well, I'll be. You guys are still here. You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry. C-Man's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the C-Man goodies, join the Cinema Sit Down squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.